In this video, we're going to look at trinomials, but now our leading coefficient is not 1. So in our general form of ax squared plus bx plus c, in the last video we looked at a was equal to 1. In this video, we're going to start plugging in numbers there. And as you can expect, that changes our factoring, because while we'll still have these two pieces multiplying together, it's just now there's more to deal with. In the last video, we just had x plus or minus some number and x plus or minus some number. But now adding an a, we're going to have some numbers in front of x. So there's a lot more to figure out. There are a lot of different methods out there for doing this. A popular one that's taught is just trial and error, where you just plug in numbers until it works. I'm going to show the AC method. If you have a method that you prefer, you can absolutely use that. Sometimes trial and error is faster, but with larger numbers, I think the AC method's a good one, that it always works. So what we're going to do here is go through an example, and with that I'll talk about these steps for going through the AC method and apply it to the example as we go. So similar to what we did in the previous video where I started listing out the factors of c, we're going to do the same thing, except it's going to be for a times c. So we're going to take our value for a and multiply that by c and look at the factors. So for our example here, a times c, so I'm looking at 8 times positive 5. So I want to look at the factors of 40. And that's coming from 8 times 5. So listing out these factors of 40, I want to do something similar to that I did before, in that I want to look for a sum that equals b. So I want to look for two factors that add up to negative 14. So something I could use here is I'm going to need negative numbers here. So to get a positive, it's going to be two negatives. So I could have -1 and -40. That would multiply to positive 40, but add up to a negative number. You'd have -2 and -20, -4 and -10, and that would, if we add those two together, would add up to -14. So those are going to be our two numbers. So that's our first step. Calculate a times c, and then find a pair of factors whose sum is b. So that's what we did right there. Our next piece is going to be to rewrite the middle term as a sum of two terms. So what we're going to do is this 8x squared minus 14x plus 5. The middle term is this negative 14x. And what I'm going to do is split that into two terms. So the 8x squared is going to stay the same, so that'll still be out front there. I'll still have a positive 5. What I'm going to do is change this middle term, and what I'm going to do is use that -4 and -10. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have -4 times x and -10 times x. So again, that first term stayed the same, last term stayed the same, but this -14x I split into two, where I use the numerical coefficients of the factors, so the -4 and -10, and split into two. So what I have here is a longer expression, but if I combined like terms, -4x minus 10x, it would just combine back to the original expression. So I haven't really changed anything numerically, I've just changed its appearance. So now we have something in 4 terms here. So I'm going to use factoring by grouping. So that's where I split the expression in half. I look at the left-hand side and look for a greatest common factor, which will be 4x. 8x squared divided by 4x, I'll have a 2x left over. -4x divided by 4x will be a -1. On the right-hand side, I have a leading negative number, so my greatest common factor will be negative, and it'll be a 5. So negative 10x divided by negative 5 will leave me with a positive 2 times x. Positive 5 divided by negative 5 will leave us with a negative 1. So then I have my common factor of 2x minus 1. So I factor it out, and then the leftover is 4x minus 5. So what we did is we looked at AC and thought about the factors and found the ones that added up to our value for B. Then we took that middle term and split it up, because what we want to get to is 4 terms so that we can do factoring by grouping. So we separate it using those factors as numerical coefficients, and then we go through our steps for the grouping method. So split in half, get out those greatest common factors on each side, and then you'll have this common term that can factor out, and then your expression with the leftovers in there. Again, you can always check by foiling out. That'll give us our 8x squared. We'll have negative 10x minus 4x for the negative 14, and then a positive 5 at the end there. All right, let's look at this with some examples. So we have a number out front, so I'm going to look at A times C. So 2 times 15, which is positive 30. And then I would start looking at the different possibilities, 3, 10, 5, 6, and think about which of those add up to B. So adding each of those, so 31, 13, 11. So I want to use that positive 5 and positive 6. So what I'm going to do is take that middle term of 11x. I leave the first term alone, so 2x squared stays the same. But instead of writing 11x, I'm going to split that up into positive 5x and positive 6x. And then that last term of 15 stays the same. So I separated up that 11x. Then I'm going to factor by grouping. So I'm going to split in half and look for these common factors on each side. So on the left-hand side, there's a common factor of x. So that'll leave me with a 2x plus 5. On the right-hand side, there's a common factor of positive 3. And that'll leave me with 2x plus 5. So I have this common factor of 2x plus 5, so I'm going to factor out 2x plus 5, and that'll leave us with x plus 3. And if we want to double check it, just FOIL it out, and you should end up back at the original expression. Okay, last example here. So 3x squared minus x minus 10. So I notice I have a number out front, so I'm going to use the AC method. So I'm going to take 3 times, and then that'll be a negative 10. So I'm looking at negative 30. So I could have negative 1 positive 30, 1 negative 30. You could do all of these, negative 3, 10, 3 negative 10. Again, you'll probably start getting an instinct for the numbers that'll work with these, but just to show you the exhaustive form, that would be all of them, and then I would just start adding them up. Now, instinct tells me it'll be a combination of the 5 and 6. Something I like to do, especially with negative numbers, is just don't go too fast with it. Be careful, because that's where those little mistakes are made that change everything. So negative 5 plus 6 would be a positive 1, and 5 plus a negative 6 would be negative 1, and we want negative 1. So we're going to work with that 5 and negative 6. So we'll use that to separate up that middle term of negative x. So 3x squared stays the same. We'll have a positive 5x and negative 6x. And then the negative 10 just stays the same at the end there. Then we'll factor by grouping. So I'm going to split it up in half. On the left-hand side, there's a common factor of x. So I'll have a 3x plus 5 left over. On the right-hand side, so our leading coefficient's negative, so our greatest common factor will be negative. and we'll have a greatest common factor of 2 that we can take out from each. So negative 6x divided by negative 2 will be a positive 3x. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is a positive 5. So we have this common factor of 3x plus 5 that we can factor out, and then left over we have an x minus 2. So that's the AC method. It gets into factoring by grouping, but in order to get to the grouping method, we have to split apart that middle term using the factors of AC.